Welcome back to Mastering MHA MBA and to Chapter 6, Part 2. In Part 1, we defined country risk. Now we go to its source. The world runs on three major political systems, and the one you're walking into tells you most of what you need to know about the risk you're taking. The three are authoritarianism, socialism, and democracy. An important caution before we start. These categories are not mutually exclusive. Many democracies include elements of socialism. Many former authoritarian regimes now blend socialism and democracy. Real countries are mixtures, not textbook cases. Start with authoritarianism. Under authoritarianism, the state attempts to regulate most aspects of public and private behavior. Power is centralized in the government. The state may seek to control not only economic and political matters, but also the attitudes, values, and beliefs of its citizens. Authoritarian states are generally either theocratic, meaning religion based, or secular. Usually there is a state party led by a dictator, such as Kim Jong un in North Korea. Party membership becomes mandatory for anyone seeking to advance within the social and economic hierarchy. Power is typically maintained through secret police, propaganda spread by state controlled mass media, regulation of free discussion and criticism, and sometimes terror tactics. These states usually do not tolerate churches, labor unions, or political parties whose activities are not directed toward the state's own goals. Well-known authoritarian states from the past include China from 1949 into the 1980s and the Soviet Union from 1918 to 1991. Many such states have since disappeared or evolved toward democracy and capitalism. China began major reforms in the 1980s. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Agricultural land and state enterprises were sold to private interests, and entrepreneurs gained the right to establish their own businesses. But the transition has not been easy. Substantial red tape and bureaucracy still hinder economic activity in China and several former Soviet states. Today, elements of authoritarianism persist across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Several countries are controlled by heads of state with sweeping dictatorial powers, including Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Venezuela. For a firm, the practical meaning is simple. The rules can change because one person decides they should. Now, socialism. Its fundamental principle is that capital and wealth should be vested in the state and used primarily as a means of production rather than for profit. Socialism rests on a collectivist ideology in which the collective welfare of people outweighs the welfare of the individual. The argument runs like this. Capitalists receive a disproportionate amount of society's wealth relative to workers. In a capitalist society, the pay of workers does not represent the full value of their labor. Therefore, government should control the basic means of production, distribution, and commercial activity. In practice, socialism mostly takes the form of social democracy. That is an ideology supporting economic and social interventions to promote social justice through democratic means. Social democracies blend capitalist and socialist practices and often run highly developed welfare systems that distribute aid to those in need. Social democracy has been most successful in Western Europe, and it plays a major role in large countries like Brazil and India. These governments intervene frequently in the private sector, as in Italy and Norway. Corporate income tax rates run relatively high, as in France and Sweden. Germany has even experienced net outflows of foreign direct investment as businesses seek to escape extensive regulation. Third, democracy. It is characterized by two major features, and the first is private property rights. Individuals can own property and increase their asset base by accumulating private wealth. Property includes tangibles, such as land and buildings, and intangibles, such as stocks, contracts, patent rights, and intellectual assets. Why do property rights matter so much commercially? Because they encourage individual initiative, ambition, and innovation, as well as thrift and the desire to accumulate wealth. People are far less likely to show any of those qualities if there is uncertainty about whether they can control their property or profit from it. The second feature is limited government. The government performs the essential functions that serve all citizens: national defense, maintenance of law and order, diplomatic relations, and building and maintaining infrastructure such as roads, schools, and public works. But state control of the economic activity of private individuals and firms is kept minimal, so that market forces allocate resources efficiently. Democracy is closely associated with openness, meaning a lack of excessive regulation or barriers to the entry of firms into foreign markets. The greater the openness, the fewer constraints on foreign firms, and the more buyers benefit through greater quantity and variety of products. India proves the point. After its government lowered entry barriers in the Indian automobile market, foreign automakers steadily entered. Their presence increased the number of models available, raised the quality of available cars, and lowered prices. A similar response followed in the mobile telephone market in China. Democracy carries its own tension. Because people have differing levels of personal and financial resources, each performs with a varying degree of success, and inequalities follow. Critics of pure democracy argue that when those inequalities become excessive, government should step in to correct them. Each society balances individual freedom against broader social goals. This is why virtually all democracies include elements of socialism. Japan spent 2 decades searching for the right balance. After poor management practices and recession bankrupted thousands of Japanese firms, the government intervened to support large firms and banks that, under pure capitalism, would have failed. It preserved jobs and stability. It also created inflexibility and delayed needed structural improvements. So, most countries you will actually do business in are best described as having a mixed political system, with a strong private sector and a strong public sector operating together, alongside considerable government regulation and control. That describes Australia, Canada, the United States, and much of Europe. Here is the 2026 reality check, and it matters for anyone planning a market entry. According to the V-Dem Institute's Democracy Report, autocracies now outnumber democracies 92 to 87. 44 countries are currently autocratizing, home to 41% of the world's population, a record for this wave. By V-Dem's measure, the global level of democracy has fallen back to where it stood in 1978. Let us recap part 2. There are three political systems, and real countries mix them. Authoritarianism centralizes power and controls behavior. Socialism vests capital in the state and mostly appears as social democracy. Democracy rests on private property rights and limited government and is closely tied to openness. This builds on our chapter notes from Cavusgill, Knight and Riesenberger's International Business, The New Realities, on political systems in national environments, updated with the 2026 V-Dem Democracy Report. We know the three systems. In part 3, we ask the question that follows: does the way a country is governed actually make it richer? And we look at the three economic systems these political systems produce. If this is helping, subscribe, and we will see you there.